Welcome. We're toward the very end of our class at this point, and when we're talking about lifespan of development, we often end by talking about end of life care, which would include those last couple decades of our life, all the way up to the end. And for some, where we actually realize that we are in the dying process, we have another aspect of lifespan development that we will discuss, including hospice. So I have often had my mom, Val Boyles, join me and be a guest lecturer before in this class, and I was excited to have her do this again. Right now I'm visiting her in her home in Minnesota, and you can see here's me 25 years later. And anyways, kind of nice. How often do you get to see your instructor's parent, right? So very happy to have my mother with us today, and she worked in activities with senior citizens, as well as then later hospice, primarily with senior citizens, and did some volunteer work as well, and is now volunteered herself. So that's one of the more fun aspects of older adulthood, and I'm happy to have her here today. When we enter our discussion for this week, if there are particular questions that you would like to reach out to myself, or rather my mother, Val Boyles, for, you can email me at my email, Vanessa Ewing, or V Ewing, right? EWING at Naropa. And I will get back to you on your questions if you have any. So without further ado, this is fabulous lady who is done a lot of great work with older adults and in hospice and in general care to make the last aspect of the lifespan as enjoyable as possible. Ignore the noise outside. And of course, she's fabulous in general, and she's my mom. So without further ado, here's Val Boyles.
Thank you. Yes, I've been doing this type of work for about 20 years, but I've been retired now for 2.5. So I said I'm not quite into the rhythm of it at the moment, but I'll share with you, and again, if there are questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you. In working in recreation, in activities in nursing homes, I came to realize how much the elderly have to offer, and I always felt like the nurses and the aides and all the other, very essential people that you need keep you fed and get your medicines, but then what? And so to me, then the activities were that part, that social part, or that fun part, the part that a reason to go on with what you have left of life, especially when it maybe isn't the best at that time as far as how you feel and if you can do all the things you used to do. So having done that for 10 years or so, then I was recruited by a hospice, and I'll tell you a couple little stories. My mother passed away, and I was with her, and Vanessa, we were both with her along with other family members, and then I went back to work after a few days, and one of the patients I was working with, I needed to interview her about activities, and she was like being kind of crabby with me because she thought, well, who cares? I'm on hospice. I'm dying, So she was in our nursing home, but she was also on hospice. Anyway, because she had colon cancer, which my mother had, and I felt sad, and a tear kind of streaked down my face, that I couldn't hide. And the lady just, she looked at me, and her whole demeanor changed, and, she asked me what was wrong, and she took my hand, and I told her that my mother had just died of colon cancer. And she said, I've been wondering why I'm still here, but now I know. She said, I'm here for you. And then she said, what do you need to know? And she answered my questions. And later that day, when I peeked into her room, she was non-responsive. So I just kind of whispered to her, say hi to Mom when you get there. And later that night, she was gone. So I had a variety of those types of experiences, both in the nursing home and then, of course, often once I actually started working for hospice. When I was offered to come and interview for the hospice job, it just happened that was on the same date that my father had died. And then when they called to offer me the job, it was when my mother died. It was all these kind of coincidences, you might call them, or happenings that just seemed to tie everything together. And I worked there for 10 years. And in the middle of it, about 5 years in, I was teaching some of the other new staff. And I was telling them about how the night before I had this dream. And my mom and dad were both in the dream, and it was so real. And they were talking to me. And they said, "Why don't you have a picture of us there in your office? Because after all, we got you that job." So it throughout the years just kind of connected, and for me to realize just how much you can enjoy, how much you can gain from people that are at these points in their life, that it's really a privilege to be with them. So what I did then when I worked for hospice was that I would recruit, train, and coordinate, manage the volunteers. And my husband would do some volunteering for me, and I'd often go along on the volunteering myself. So we were with people a few times when they passed. Considering how long we did it, it wasn't that many, but we were often with people shortly before, they were going to die, or a little bit after. Sometimes we walk in and they had already passed. But I found that hospice was such a wonderful benefit, and it's a benefit that Medicare, for the most part, pays for. Each state, you got to kind of figure out where things are at with that. But in the time I was working for it, Medicare was paying for the majority of our patients. So they were able to get supplies and the medications that pertained to why they were dying. And then, of course, the medical director, the nurses, the aides, social workers, spiritual care. Sometimes we had musicians and therapists, massage therapy, and of course the volunteers that I recruited. So you got all these wonderful benefits, and Medicare was paying for it. So we tried to get others to understand that not to wait until people would seem to think that if they were going to be on hospice, then they were going to give up and die right away. And what we found is that people often lived as long or longer than if they weren't on it, because they were getting such good care. And the social workers and the spiritual care people interacted with the patient, of course, but all the different family members, and got everyone on the same page and everyone talking. So they were so much more at ease that then often they lived a little longer. Not like I could swear in the Bible they lived longer, but I mean, it wasn't like they were going to die the next day because they went on hospice. And that was something I think really important to know. And it was a much more peaceful goodbye. They were able to share their feelings with their family. And if it was something that they didn't feel comfortable sharing with their family, they were able to share with us, with the team, with the volunteers, and if spiritual care people too, and that would help if their conscience was bothering them or something. So it got to be really kind of a beautiful thing. Let me think what other things that you might want to know. But since I retired, I was visiting a cousin of mine that was on hospice, and he was at the stage where he really couldn't talk to you anymore. He couldn't really even react. But because of all the work I've done, I knew that it could be helpful to him to have someone there that was familiar, even if he couldn't express it. So I would go sometimes play piano or sing or just take him outside or something. And then in the last couple years, my brother-in-law was also on hospice, and my sister was taking care of him up until the last 3 months. So my husband and I would help her, support her, sit with him so she could go out, that kind of thing. So it's not what you'd say easy, but it's very rewarding, and you get as much or more from the experience than the patient does. So I keep having these experiences, even though I'm not working anymore, and I'm the youngest in my family. So my older brother and sisters are always saying, "Oh, well, but who's going to be there for you?" And I say, "Vanessa." So I think that's probably all.
Can you think of, in general, I was thinking of words of wisdom for someone that's thinking about working with end-of-life care or older adults in general.
Older adults in general.
Retired on through end of life.
Listen to them. I guess that would be the main thing. They often have all these stories to tell, and maybe they've told them to their family and they feel like, well, they've heard me so many times, I don't want to, bore them. So, and if they're getting close to the end, they very often want to review their life, and they'll go, they'll start at the beginning, well, as far as they can remember, and talk and tell you all about it. So just be a good listener and be compassionate and patient with them. And sometimes when they act out kind of angry, like the lady did to me, it's that they're just they're frustrated, and you just have to give them time. Be patient with them. Some people aren't comfortable doing this, but if you are one of the ones, after you try it out a little bit and you are comfortable with it, you'll gain a lot from it. And then as you get older yourself, you know a little bit about it. And like I said, if a doctor tells a patient they have probably 6 months or less to live, and they'll recommend hospice, do it. Don't feel like that's a death sentence. They're going to take good care of you. You can always get back off if you want to be taking medicines to, prevent whatever disease you have. Whereas they'll give you the medications for the pain and keep you comfortable, but you usually wouldn't be getting the medication that, to try to cure you. Yeah. But again, you could opt off of the hospice. Yeah, I didn't used to know that, and I think that's kind of important, that you can sign off.
How about last, what are your personal wishes for your last, hopefully my grandmother lived to her early 90s, so hopefully you've got a long life ahead still, but now that you're retired, what are your, what's on your list of things you want to do?
I have a bucket list right here, as a matter of fact, that I just wrote down for my husband. A lot of traveling as far as while we're able. And I think about, okay, what will I want, later? And I guess as long as my mind is good, and I'm not in too much pain. I guess I don't want to be in pain, and I want to, have music, and I'm still kind of formulating it, as time goes by.
She's somewhat newly retired, just two years.
2 years, yeah. So I'm still at the stage of just thinking, yay, it's like I'm a teenager again. We can go and do things and just have fun with our friends and go to Florida in the wintertime. But definitely we discuss these things because we're pretty comfortable with it, and again, help my brother-in-law do this sort of thing. He had Alzheimer's, though, so at the end he couldn't really say much. A lot of the patients do have some form of dementia, both in the nursing home or the patients with hospice. And there again, you have to kind of search for that light in their eyes. And often music will do it, or you talk to the family, you find out what they liked when they were young, what their hobby was, what made them smile. like I said, music is often a good trigger. Yeah, so I guess that's pretty much it, unless you have any specific questions.
I can't think of any others right now. So, thank you again. I'm glad you all got to join us, Valerie Boyles, and here my class learned some cheesy cheers that are good for kids. It's Lifespan. And we've got roller coaster cheer. We do have a Minnesota cheer or a wow cheer. Do you have a preference of what you'd like to hear?
Wow.
Wow is WOW. Wow. And because you are who you are, I can go, wow, Mom. Wow, Mom. All right. I look forward to talking to you all again soon. Bye-bye.